As already said, we have long-term partnerships also with IPA, the International Platinum Association. So I would like to introduce our next speaker, Johan, and he is representing IPA, but he will give you more detailed, really overview on how the crime is really impacting the catalytic converter industry in South Africa. When I was first speaking with IPA, I was impressed. I was really like, wow, you know, because this was another challenge, I must say, I was aware of, I was not in detail with. So that's the reason why I'm really looking forward to your presentation. So the floor is yours.
Good day, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you very much for this opportunity. My name is Johan, as Torsten already introduced me. I am representing the IPA, the International Platinum Association. And I've been, just less than a year, I've been part of the IPA. And I must say that this past year has really been unprecedented. I've formerly worked in the petrochemical industry, and compared to what I faced there, this is just next level. So I hope I can really bring some perspective and give you an overview of the catalytic converter industry and the challenges that we face. So I need to give you a little bit of an overview of the IPA so that you can understand where the IPA fits in. So the IPA is International Platinum Group Association. That is a non-profit organization that represents worldwide leading mining, production, fabrication companies in the global platinum group industry. They're comprising of precious group, platinum group metals such as platinum, palladium, iridium, rhodium, ruthenium, osmium, and the IPA were founded in 1987, and they're currently based in Munich. The IPA meets twice a year, and throughout the year they regularly meet with different associated bodies, and they engage and collaborate within strong networks within organizational partnerships. The major aim of the IPA is to act as a platform for discussions, for information, to exchange between members and the outside world. Also, furthermore, the IPA serves as an early warning system for the PGM industry by monitoring legislation on emissions, REACH, recycling, EHS, as well as other trade and health and safety sustainable developments. So the members of the IPA together employ 250,000 people and have an annual combined turnover of about $40 billion US. Its members is made up of extractive companies such as Anglo American, Sibanye, Implats, Northam, and then fabricators like Umicore, BASF, Johnson Matthey, just to mention a few. So in order for you to understand what the catalytic converting industry is all about, I need to give you an overview of what is a catalytic converter. So a catalytic converter is made up of a honeycomb or a metal structure that is basically used for making sure that it's built into the combustion system of the engine, and it's making sure that all the pollutants that passes through the system is exchanged through a redox catalytic process, so that the emissions that you have at the end on the other side of the catalytic converter are more acceptable. So how does this basically work? So you have the substrate, which is basically coated with a PGM infused liquid that we call a wash coat. So when this substrate is coated, it's built into the can within the stainless steel can, and which is then shipped to the car manufacturers and ultimately goes into the car manufacturing business as well as into the export market. So just to emphasize the value chain. So the coaters, so basically the PGMs, the platinum group metals, is extracted from the mining companies as well as the raw materials. Then it is shipped to the coaters, the fabricators. So the fabricators are basically a giant cake making factory where you take the substrates and you coat them with platinum group metals, PGMs, liquids. They go into an oven. From there, they are packed and shipped to the canners. As already explained, that's where they place it within the stainless steel can or the, enclosure, and then that is shipped to the motor industry. So within the catalytic converter industry is making up 71% of the applications for PGMs. So obviously, the rest of the industry is used for example, chemical applications, as well as medical applications such as pacemakers, hearing devices, chemical processes. And if you look at the current prices in terms of, you need to compare it with the more well-known type of precious metals, for example, like gold and silver. If you look at what the prices are for rhodium and palladium and platinum, you would understand why this has become a real highly sought-after commodity. So although I'm going to focus on the crimes impacting the goods in transit, and it's important that you also understand the different levels where the organized crime groupings function. So the first level there is your runners. That is the collusion that takes place within your employees, within the companies, maybe between security as well. And then what they are bringing out the different type of products. So within the value chain, at every part of the production, whether it is the raw materials in terms of PGMs, or the nitrates, or the wash coats, as it's going through the production process, all of these are at any given time at risk of being pilfered out of your facility. So that is the job of the runners. Then going to the next level, that is the middlemen, where they basically have established networks on the outside. They are able to pay market-related prices for the PGMs that the runners are bringing out of the facilities. That takes you to the next level, which is the national buyers. They are the ones that have established links across border links to be able to ship and to export these illicit products. And then it gets to the criminal syndicates. So the criminal syndicates that are masterminding and at this fourth level, controlling all the different types of inputs within the different levels. But we have also seen that you have within the legitimate corporate facilities, you have the criminal syndicate leaders already embedded within those companies. And then that is where the level 2 and 3 basically falls away. And there's a direct link between your runners and your criminal syndicate leaders. So the international buyers are where the PGMs find its way more to the attractive market internationally. Internationally, the market is not as regulated as in South Africa. At least within South Africa, we have the Precious Metal Act of 37 of 2005, which helps and supports regulating the precious metal within South Africa. We also see sophisticated legal entities registered legally to deal with PGM. So, for example, illicit companies would register legally to buy and sell PGMs, and they will use that as a fronting company to be able to export, illegally export PGMs from South Africa. We see this happening through our Tambo, and we see it being exported to countries like Jordan, China, as well as Mexico. I think it's important that you do understand with our supply chain, it's vast distances that the products need to travel. So, unfortunately, there are only a few limited routes that we can use. Mainly, the products go from Gauteng. They are transported across to Port Elizabeth, also to PE, and as well as to Cape Town. It's important to understand every time your product is on the road, that is when it's most vulnerable, where there is a lack of law enforcement involvement, if you take the vast routes that it travels. So first of all, the awareness part of law enforcement, they are not aware what is a catalytic converter, what is the values of these catalytic converters, and they don't realize the impact that it has on the South African business. So when you are trying to manage this throughout this vast network, that is where it really becomes a challenge to deal and to liaise with the local law enforcement throughout the normal, the basic, the rural areas as you pass through to your main destinations. So it's important to note that many of your manufacturing companies situated in Port Elizabeth and Durban, also some of the coaters and the fabricators are situated in PE, and then others obviously up in Gauteng. So within the past 26 months, we've seen 19 targeted attacks consisting of hijackings and armed robberies on facilities, scanner facilities, as well as warehouses, where the main aim is to obtain catalytic converters. The modus operandi is basically where, when we talk about the hijackings of trucks, it's aimed at getting the trucks off the road. Jamming technology is used, sophisticated jamming technology is used, where usually the driver is taken out and usually placed in a boot of a car. The truck is then driven out to a secluded area, and another vehicle is brought in, and then that is when the finished goods are being transferred, and then usually the truck is being left and the driver has been dropped off at a later stage at another location. The average value taken per incident is around 10 to 20 million per load. And then over the last 24 months, the total value, estimated total value of losses is around 240 million. And almost every truck is currently being escorted. Those that have been hijacked over that period of time was not being escorted. In terms of the armed robbery attacks on warehouses and canning facilities, the robbers would pose as police officers or security officers in uniform. They may use marked vehicles. They would get in to the facility via social engineering or some type of ruse. They would overpower the guards, tie up the guards, and it also been known that they could cut the power to the facility, and that was to disable communication systems. The guards would then be forced to disable the alarm systems within the warehouses and the manufacturing part of the canning facility. They would also then bring in their own vehicles, their own trucks. Sometimes guards will also be used to, if they are having the necessary training, they would be forced to operate forklifts to be able to load these goods on the illegal trucks coming in. Over all of this, the criminal element have their own tactical teams that are waiting any other threats that might be willing to engage while they are busy. Unfortunately, we see these type of incidents continuing for continuous periods of time, maybe between 4 and 7 hours while they are busy loading, and we've seen that because they were able to continue unhindered. We've also seen trucks with raw materials being taken, so that is materials that does not contain PGMs, and we believe the working assumption is that the intelligence might not have been good enough, and they were thinking that they were actually targeting trucks with finished goods. Within the past year, every fabricator and canner has reverted to armed escorts. At the moment, everyone is using armed escorts. We have seen when fabricators were using armed escorts, and to use armed escorts for international multinational companies are not always an easy decision to make. But we've seen the moment they've removed the armed escorts from those loads, the very next day they were targeted and hijacked. So security comes at a premium cost, and it impacts the sustainability of doing business in South Africa. And I think that is the question that many of our multinationals are asking at this point in time. We have seen a great level of insider knowledge where robbers only select certain parts containing PGM. So, for example, when a truckload carries a mixed load, PGM as well as non-PGM, they know exactly which parts to go for. We also know that routes and values of loads are being shared via insider threat, insider knowledge prior to these attacks. Also, at facilities, we've seen on CCTV that criminals are actually being guided by talking on a cell phone. Someone on the other side is telling them exactly where the pallets are situated and located, which they need to load. So all of this speaks to that insider part. And obviously, they will focus on the more expensive parts. So, for example, one part, which I've explained earlier, could cost anything between 25,000 and 50,000 rand. In November last year, we have seen a game-changer event. For the first time, an armed escort truck was attacked. The attack was executed in military precision by a group of 8 armed men, which first attacked the escort vehicle, making sure they could separate it from the truck, and then opening fire on the escort vehicle, forcing it off the road. Then there was another armed group that were lying in wait in an ambush position, and then they were taking the vehicle, the truck, to a secluded area for the goods to be offloaded and to be transferred. And all of this happened in a matter of minutes. So fortunately, in that incident, no fatalities occurred. However, one of the armed guards were injured by breaking his arm, and that was a direct loss of 14,400,000 was encountered in that specific incident. So after this incident, the industry increased the amount of escort vehicles. Usually it was maybe just one escort vehicle with a truck. So all the competitors in that industry came together and agreed that we need to do a collaborative, collective effort to make sure that we are aligned so that there is no other company that would be left behind. So we all agreed that we will add 2 additional escort vehicles for every load, as well as we looked at specific standards and training for the contracted security companies that we use, as well as placing high demand on specialized training, also making sure that they use robust anti-jamming technology, that the trucks are fitted with CCTV, alternative communications, panic duress buttons, as well as training for the drivers. Okay, apologies, I think you were just looking at the wrong slide there for a moment. But that is the incident from the 14th of November. So what happens then after the catalytic converters are taken? After they are taken, there are 2 options. So first of all, it's something that hasn't really gained a lot of traction in South Africa. That is where catalytic converters are stolen off vehicles and trucks. These ones are taken by smaller criminal groups. Like I said, it hasn't really gained much traction internationally. It has, but we haven't really seen it here in South Africa. So these catalytic converters are then sold to scrapyards that are then able to crush these catalytic converters. The second option there is when the bulk loads are taken. That is when all of these converters are being crushed and mixed with material from spent catalysts. And the reason why they do this is to mask the actual value of the load. So these are then exported to Europe, the UAE and Jordan. It's companies with legitimate export licenses which are used to export these loads. And the bulk loads of Autokats could be sold to unscrupulous scrap metal dealers. So we just see this really happening more and more frequently. So just as an example, on the 2nd of February 2022, excuse me, detected dog at our Tambo airport, they have confiscated a load of a shipment weighing 2,650 kilograms of catalytic converters, crushed catalytic converter material. This was destined for Dubai and the UK and Oman. Thank you. The next example there is catalytic converter powder was found at OR Tambo, destined for Dubai. They weighed 128 kilograms, and the estimated value was 5 million rand. But the declared value was 470,000 rand. And you can see what the modus operandi is in trying to mix these original catalytic converters with the spent catalysts to be able to get it through the customs and bypassing the customs duties and all the control measures. The third one, catalytic converter powder, was destined for Oman, weighing 1,100 kilograms, which was valued at 11 million rand. And the last one to mention was catalytic converter solids destined for the UK, weighing at 1,450 kilograms, valued at 5 million rand. So we also see that these arrests are, when arrests are being made in this industry, it's that the value of the products are not taken into consideration. For example, you've just heard the values that we deal with. So, for example, when arrests are made, it's mere charges of being in possession of stolen goods, and the actual value of the goods are not being considered. So our concerns at the moment is that PGMs can be extracted and melted. The moment it is being melted down and refined, it changes form, and then it's virtually untraceable, which obviously poses a problem. Other forms of precious goods can be easily traced and tracked, which helps with law enforcement and also retrieving the stolen goods, which, however, in the catalytic converter industry is not the case. So many times the illicit trade in PGMs also finds its way. So when it changes form, it's refined, it many times finds its way back into the legitimate PGM industry. So we see that the insufficient sharing of incident data within the industry, the lack of recorded data, as well as the lack of awareness by law enforcement, contributes to the majority of the success of the illicit trade. The reality is that the support which we have experienced from the police has been very limited or non-existent, such as reluctance to open cases, neglecting to follow up with information provided by the industry related to evidence, witnesses, or even suspects, failing to communicate or exchange information with companies that are being targeted by these criminal networks. Perhaps in very sensitive cases, we've also found that the trust relationship with the police, law enforcement, has been broken because of corruption and fraud, as was mentioned today before. So what do we know? We know that PGMs will continue to be attractive into international organized crime groupings. The local police usually only focuses on cases that are local in cross-border situations. They are not really involved, they work in silo, and we require more collaboration in partnerships to ensure that this type of crime is displaced within our industry. Although much has already been done to create awareness within the law enforcement agencies in terms of the type of materials, the value of the PGMs, we need to still continue to drive this, and only by collaboration and partnerships between law enforcement and all the industry role players, we will be able to achieve this. Thank you very much. Are there any questions?
I know it's late. Thanks for this one. Excellent. I see already. Do we have questions? Any? There's a question. First Alida, then we hand over.
Yeah, sorry, just on the commodity, and you say it is exported. So I know that I've seen that commodity through an X-ray machine, and I have to tell you, and the civil aviation also being in the room, that is an opaque image. So it shouldn't go through anyone's, it shouldn't be cleared. So if anything is found in South Africa like that, I'm sure that will be stopped immediately because it can't be flown.
Yeah, thank you very much. So obviously, we know that the Hawks have been doing great work in that space in terms of busts which they've actually stopped at our Tambo. There are many cases that are currently busy going through the courts on that. So in terms of the details, I'm not sure exactly what the question was, but in terms of that detail, definitely, I mean, with the right type of technology, you are able to assess and make sure that these materials do not go through and are not exported. But again, inside a collusion within the airport space, and law enforcement plays a role here, and that's why many of these BGMs do find their way to all the other international destinations. Any other question?
Yeah, Johan, just one question is, so the size of the commodity or the packaging of the commodity, will that be too big to place inside the 8-ton P6 protected armored truck?
Yeah, just to give you an idea, so the large loads is a Superlink truck that takes about 84 pallets, and it will be, you know, the size is too big to really put an armored vehicle around it. So that makes sense.
There's one more question in the back there.
I'm going to ask a simple question. Why not fly it? Why are we driving it?
Yeah, it's because of the volumes. We send probably on the road maybe 2-3 times a week. You have a Superlink truck, and yeah, it's about the cost-benefit analysis. Even with the escorts, the security escorts with the vehicles, we are still, it's more affordable to drive it on using road freight.
I think you need to talk to us.
Okay, thanks again. Thank you. And a big applause again for Johan. Thank you.